kick us off. So thank you all very much for being with us today as we start our 20th anniversary celebration. I'm going to have Leah Weinberg, who is the chair of our board of trustees, give a brief welcome, and then we'll move through the rest of the evening. So Leah.
All right, so a little bit of housekeeping. I'm sure you are all well versed in Zoom these days, but if you are not currently speaking, there is a mute button down on the bottom left corner that I would encourage you to press. I'm hearing some feedback right now, so I think we need to get everyone muted if possible. All right, let's see. Someone's phone number ending in 4620. We may need to mute that one.
That's me, but I thought I was muted.
You're muted on the computer, but you're still on the phone call.
Oh.
All right. That sounds much better. Wonderful. Thank you, Raleigh. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Most of you already know me, but for those who don't, my name is Leah Weinberg, and I am our current chair of the board here at the Jackson Center. For those who have received your anniversary goblets in time for tonight and the treats, please don't be afraid to use them. I am missing my chocolates already as my husband got to them before I did, so unfortunately I won't be snacking on those. This Founders Day marks the celebration of not only the first 20 years of commitment, dedication, and hard work, which we'll certainly reflect upon over the next hour or so, but I would say also marks the beginning of a new phase of opportunity for the Robert H. Jackson Center. This past year, all of our lives were all turned upside down by COVID-19. Many individuals, understandably, were focused on making sure that their immediate family needs were taken care of. But as a nonprofit, we didn't know where that would leave us. We faced many challenges this year that we never could have anticipated. Were our staff members and volunteers safe? Would they be working from home? How do we run the center away from the center? Do we still have an audience? What are their concerns? How do we reach them? How do we continue to afford to reach them? Can we financially make it through the year? Well, I am very proud to say that this year, our 20th year, I have been able to witness more dedication and commitment from our supporters than I ever could have imagined, all despite the challenges that we faced. I would like to take this time briefly to thank Kristen, our president, and all of our staff members and volunteers. You have been incredibly adaptable, creative, and committed, and we could not have made it to our 20th year anniversary without you. To my fellow board members, you too deserve a world of thanks. We have had to be more open-minded than I think we ever could have imagined, and have pivoted in virtual directions that we didn't anticipate. And certainly to all of our supporters, both financially and non, there was a point in time this year where we weren't sure what our future would hold. But not only have we gotten through this year, but we have thrived, broadening our audience, honing in on our focus, and reaching individuals in new yet meaningful ways. We've adapted. We have developed learning techniques and tools that will help propel us into the next 20 years. So thank you everyone for being here today, and certainly those who could not make it here today, for continuing to support this organization, not only for the past 20 years, but for many, many years to come. And with that, I'd like to kick this event off by inviting Joe Johnson to our virtual floor. Joe, are you there? You may be muted. What?
We've lost Joe.
We may have lost Joe.
All right, we can go a little out of order. So, Jeanette, actually, why don't we start with you and your toast to Carl?
Okay, very good. Well, I just want to say a big hello to everyone. I know most of you, but there's some I have not met. But welcome aboard to the Jackson Center. I just wanted to thank you for inviting me to give a salute or a toast to my brother, Carl Kappa. Hard to imagine that 20 years have passed since Greg Peterson invited Carl Kappa, Betty Lene, and Tom Cardman, who was representing the Gebby Foundation, to his office to discuss the possibility of creating a Robert H. Jackson Center. You know, the old saying we are all familiar with is that one thing leads to another. Well, the one thing that happened is that Carl was invited by Greg Peterson at another time, this was the earlier time, to sit for one of his interviews. And during the interview, Greg asked Carl, "Who is your hero?" And Carl immediately answered, "Robert H. Jackson." And as Greg has told me, he was a little surprised when he heard Carl say this, as he thought he probably would say Joe DiMaggio or some other sports figure. I'm sure that after Greg's initial shock, the bells started to ring in Greg's head. Well, it was not long after that when Carl received the invitation to go to this meeting that I referred to earlier. Carl loved his community and his country. He came from parents who had immigrated from Italy, and there were 8 children in our family. Carl was the oldest, and I was the youngest. There was a difference of 15 years between Carl and myself. Carl was my protector, and he was like a second father to me. Carl was the epitome of the American dream. Through the years, Carl had been a great supporter of many community nonprofit organizations, such as the St. Susan Center, the Resource Center, the Boys and Girls Club, and he served on the very first board of directors for the Chautauqua Region Community Foundation. The proposal for the Jackson Center came at a time in Carl's life when he had health issues, and he knew his time with us was limited. And after he committed himself to the Jackson Center, he was so anxious to see the center in operation. It was a time when he could see his hero getting the recognition he deserved. But unfortunately, Carl passed away in 2001. I'm sure if Carl was with us that he would be very proud of the center's accomplishments during these 20 years. I would like to thank everyone who has contributed to its success, especially my friend Greg Peterson, who has worked tirelessly these past 20 years to make it a success. Thank you.
Cheers to Carl.
Cheers.
So I would love, especially as a newcomer, I would love for someone to share some stories from the early years. So let's say from years 0 to 10. And Carol, I'm looking at you because I feel like you've got some funny ones.
Any funny ones you could have? Funny, so funny.
Kristen, this is Randy.
Rod's always wanted to
Let
mute
Carol
you,
go.
so. You go first, Randy.
No, go ahead, Carol.
I don't know. When I first walked in there, I had no idea what it was going to be like. Talked to Raleigh and Becky and worked 3 hours a day that turned into 5 hours a day that turned into
You're live.
20 hours a day eventually, but it was a great adventure. We had a lot of fun. We didn't know what we were doing quite often, but with a lot of people, helping out. I was just the girl on the floor running around trying to help everybody out. So it really was fun. I'll think of a few things. Randy, you talk.
Well, I just wanted to share the very early days before the Jackson Center as a location even existed. the board met at the board table of the Chautauqua Region Community Foundation.
Oh,
And I remember the day when Greg and Carl Kappa and Betty Lene sat at the table and signed all the incorporation papers. And we took a picture. And, that doesn't seem like it was 20 years ago, but that's the way time goes. But I certainly spoke with Greg earlier today. The Community Foundation office and the Jackson Center being across the street from each other, I made hundreds, if not thousands, of trips back and forth, between the two buildings. And I thank Greg for the opportunity to sort of ride along with him in all those early days. And think, many of you can share the same thing. Think of the opportunities, from a small town, the people we got to meet and to learn. It's just remarkable. There's no way you can put it into words. So I thank all of you for the opportunity just being part of the game.
Thank you so much. Joe's DSL went out, so we are going to hang tight while he is muted on the line, but I muted him on my end, and so we're having a little trouble figuring out how to unmute him. I think I'd actually just like to continue with Raleigh and a toast to our first executive director.
Am I on board here?
You are.
Technology, as you know, is not my forte. I came up 3 days ago and nobody was here. So, but that was just because I got the day wrong. Anyway, nice to be a part of this. I wanted to say, Leah, I don't know if we've met. I don't even know where you are on here now. I saw you earlier. But it's nice to have young people. Kristen, of course, I've met, but this new generation is terrific. And I wanted to thank you. Now, and speaking of the old generation, I don't see him on here either. Peterson, he's got to be out there on the internet someplace. But anyway, Greg, I remember, I think I'm right in saying this, that when the Masons put their building up for sale, you signed that contract personally. And I don't think there was even any money there at the time. I mean, I think you just went out on a limb and then everybody backed you up. So that's sort of typical in some ways of the way the Jackson Center started. I think it was like Topsy, it sort of just grew. But Greg Peterson, of course, is the glue and the person had the vision, I think. I'm talking tonight about Dan Bratton, who was my predecessor. And I don't know can you hear me okay? All right. Some of you didn't know Dan Bratton, and Kristen, you're one of those people that probably didn't know Dan Bratton. I got to know Dan when he first came to Chautauqua in 1984. It was a challenging time at Chautauqua. They had money problems, of course. There was issues of what does a Christian community mean there with all these denominational houses, and there was some controversy over that. And one of the reasons I think Dan and I grooved together was he was a seminary graduate and I was a seminary graduate. Now he went on to become an ordained minister. I took the dark side and I didn't go to the ordained ministry. I ended up in business and in law school and a lot of other things. But Dan and I think we grooved together. We had sort of having a camaraderie there that was unspoken. And he and I became fairly close. I would describe Dan as a visionary with his feet on the ground. He knew that the vision at Chautauqua took people to implement, and people are imperfect. And so you're not going to get to the total where you want to be probably, but let's get as far as we can. He was a pragmatist in that sense. And he was a down to earth guy. There was no airs about Dan Bratton. I mean, what you saw was what you got. And he soon became, I think, a big part of our community. There was a couple of issues I just wanted to mention specifically. One was the example, the Soviet Union exchange. When we still were in the dark ages with the Soviet Union, along came Gorbachev, Glasnost, and all that, but still to have an exchange between America and the Soviet Union really hadn't been done, at least at any retail level like Chautauqua, and he pulled this thing off. And one of the things I got involved with that I'll never forget was he said, Raleigh, let's have a chicken barbecue. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, they've never had a chicken barbecue, these Russians. Let's introduce them to America. So we put our blue jeans on, our red scarves. We went down by the softball field. I remember Chuck LaMonica down at the Dash Inn, a place I hung out at, which I probably shouldn't have as much as I did. But he was cooking chickens at the time. He used to be down there in Faulkner. You guys have seen him on Sundays down there, I think, cooking chickens. I don't know if he still does, but we put on this doggone chicken barbecue and had all kinds of volunteers up at Chautauqua. Bratton pulled the thing off. I mean, I have to give him credit for it. And that's a kind of a thing he did. I'll give you one other illustration of Bratton. I had interviewed Bob Putney and a few World War II veterans, and I had mentioned it to Dan Bratton. He said, well, Riley, you got to do a book about this. This is incredible. Blah, blah, this small town, these guys did all this stuff. Yeah, that's the way it went. And he kept coming after me about it. Finally, he lit a fire under me. He knew how to do it. He said, Riley, if you'll do that book, I'll give you podium time at Chautauqua. I said, now we're talking. So away we went with the book and finally got the thing done. But at the day we had at the Hall of Philosophy, there were probably 18 veterans up there. And we went over on the porch afterwards at the Chautauqua Literary and Scientific Club, and these guys signed their chapters, where they'd been during the war and stuff. It was just incredible. But that's Bratton. I mean, he came to Peterson, asked him to help at the Jackson Center. Well, yeah, I'll give you a vision, but keep your feet on the ground. I mean, it's got to be something real that we can accomplish. And so I propose a toast to Dan Bratton. I mean, and here it is. I mean, visionary with his feet on the ground, and well-deserved guy to have a toast tonight. And along with Carl and Betty and others that were there at the beginning, he was a key to it, and I give him credit. I mean, it was a terrific relationship. And thank you for asking me to participate.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much, Raleigh. Before I ask for some, I'll call them the teenage years story. So from 10 to 15, I want to take a brief amount of time to thank so many of the former EDs who are joining us this evening. So Raleigh and Jim and Tom and Sue. And thank you so much for the great foundation that you laid for our work. Certainly, I appreciate it. And obviously, we wouldn't be here today without all of you. So I truly appreciate that. And I also, so many of our former staff, current staff, and docents are on as well. And certainly, we could not do half of what we do without all of you. So I also want to thank you very much, all of you, for the work, the volunteer hours, and the staff time that you put in. I truly appreciate it. All right. So who has some stories from the 10 to 15 year mark?
I do, Doug Neckers.
All right, Doug, go for it.
I have to tell you that I saw in the Post Journal when we were in Bemis Point, this little note about this place called the Robert Jackson Center, and they were having Nuremberg prosecutors. And I thought, well, this is Jamestown. In any event, I had been very interested in I.G. Farben as a student. And so I said to Suzanne, okay, it's Wednesday and we're supposed to be back in the labs tomorrow, but we're going to go down to Jamestown and see what's going on at this place called the Jackson Center. And I was driving down the street. I had no idea where it was. So I called, and it must have been Carol Drake who gave me directions. And when I got there, I found 3 Nuremberg prosecutors who were absolutely fascinating. I mean, just absolutely fascinating. And by the time Whitney Harris finished about 10 o'clock that night at the Athenaeum, Suzanne said, you got to get out of here. We got to go home. This has gone on too long. But it was that kind of experience, and it really hooked me, as a matter of fact. And I then had a lot of fun over the years because I'm in another world, I'm a historian, but at the time I was just relearning what Farben was about and who Farben was and who the people were part of the I.G. Farben cartel, that's the chemical cartel that did many other things other than Zyklon B, but it had a very important role in what became the Nazi economy before World War II, and not too long ago, you could still buy Farben stock. It wasn't worth anything, but you could still buy Farben stock on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Anyway, one further story, and I'll tell Greg this. There's only one person that I've been downstairs with that has noted that the Farben picture downstairs is a mirror image, and that's Hetty Clausen, who from Nuremberg, who said it was backward, right? She's the only person I've ever shown the Farben picture to who recognizes that Karl Karausch, who was the lead person being charged in 1947, is on the left. It's on the right instead of on the left. I can't remember where he is. Karl Karausch's son, as a matter of fact, was a member of the chemical staff at the Max Planck Institute in Mülheim Ruhr, and I happened to know him. I had no idea who he was when I knew his son, who eventually became an executive in one of the BASF, as a matter of fact. So that particular occasion hooked me, and then I met Greg, and that was the end of it. So anyway, congratulations to all of those in Jamestown who made this happen. Randy, Raleigh, Carol, and particularly Greg. I didn't know either Betty LeNay. Stan, where's Stan? He's on the phone. He's got to be happy. He's a Democrat. So anyway, all right, to Stan, you still a Democrat? In any event, congratulations on this occasion, because it's certainly one of great honor to the community. And I've noted, Kristen, things are going along pretty darn well. Congratulations.
Thank you, Doug. Joe Johnson, I saw you join, and I have lost your square now. Are you with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. Yes. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could I ask you to do your toast to Betty, please?
You may. I've had more damn trouble with this technology here. I need a grandchild in this community to help me with this stuff. Send me a grandkid. We were on a Zoom call last night for an hour and everything was fine. And then tonight, nothing works. So anyway, as you can, I think you can see, I put on a tie, which Raleigh and Greg and others know is totally antithetical to my way of life these days. Why a tie? Because Betty always said, I like to see the boys in ties. So I think there's a couple of us out here that have a tie on. Well, to say that Betty came from humble beginnings would be an understatement. She was German-Irish, raised, came to Jamestown from Louisville when she was a young girl, raised in a large family. I think she had about 6 or 7 siblings, but she was raised Irish Catholic in St. Pete's Church, where my own mother and our family, where I was raised, actually went to first grade with her daughter Nancy at St. Peter and Paul's School. One of the great mysteries to me all these years was both applied to Betty and my mother, because I always wondered how these two ladies who were morphed from shanty Irish Democrats to lace curtain Republicans, it never made any sense to me. And I used to accuse both of them, my mother and Betty, over the years of being a discredit to their race. I think maybe Betty's commitment to Bob Jackson and to a lasting tribute maybe was her way of, with his, Roosevelt Democratic history, was a way to square that circle. But she was above all a hometown gal and a hometown champion with just an overwhelming pride in a local who had done so much, came from a less than advantaged background as she did, and rose to such great heights in service to the country and to the civilized world. But also, I think it's a tribute to Greg's salesmanship and her love and respect for her dear friend Karl Kappa that also helped make this project a reality. And this project was hers. Reg was gone. And this was the first project probably that she solely made the call on. So this generous, gracious lady who progressed from a junior secretary at Blackstone to a thoughtful and purposeful philanthropist over the years, was more interested in the legacy of others than herself. Jackson, Roger Torrey Peterson, and Reg particularly. Her public philanthropies were so well known by signage all over the community that she was actually embarrassed to see it. And I remember later in her life, when she was still on top of things, she said, "Will you get our name off that damn clock in Lakewood?" You know, they had on that clock in the middle of Chautauqua Avenue, it said Lene. She said, "Lakewood is Lakewood. It's not Lene." And it took me about 3 years to get Bill Evans to get that name off that clock. But they put a lot of money into redoing downtown Lakewood. So she had a shy side as far as that was concerned. And she had a private side that the philanthropy that went on from that side was known mostly only to the recipients. I was involved in quite a few of those through Chautauqua and locally, and they were just private checks that went out that nobody but the recipient and me or somebody else that was intermediary ever would have known about. So we can't forget Reg, the Swedish-American business genius who generated the resources to support the center and to create a foundation that will benefit the Western New York region for many, many years to come. So I say, let's raise a glass to Elizabeth Smith Lene, that we may long remember and be grateful to her for her many contributions of time and treasure to her beloved community, our beloved community, and the institutions, and to improve the lives of others. So as the Swedes would say, skål, and as the Irish would say, sláinte.
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 Salute.
And salute.
In all of the languages we are cheersing.
I can.
Before we move on to some of our more recent stories, I also want to take the time to thank some additional people who are on the call with us today. So there are many current and former board members who are in attendance tonight. So thank you for all of your work getting the center to this point and helping us steer it going forward as well. I also want to thank, we have some of our financial supporters who are on the Zoom with us this evening as well. So thank you certainly to the foundation in town, and Linda and Tori, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Obviously, there's been a lot of support provided by the community to get the Jackson Center to where it is, and we are very grateful for that. And then also to our society, Jackson Society and Bench Circle supporters, some of whom are with us this evening as well. I hope that you are enjoying the stories about the history of this organization that you hold near and dear, and the work that we have been doing. So thank you as well. Okay, so we're up to years 15 to 20. I only have stories for about the last year and a half. So who can give me some stories from the most recent time? Oh, quietness.
Oh, Kristen, this is Don Wortman. I'll give you a story. I'm very much a newcomer to the Jackson Center and the Jackson Board. However, it's already been a very rich and rewarding experience. And I'll start back with what many of you know and recognize is the heroic statue of Justice Jackson, which now stands at the Jackson Center. I came to know the sculptor of that work at some point, and in so doing, came to realize that he had done a portrait bust of Jackson that, as many of you know, is at the Supreme Court. There's one at the Supreme Court, and then of course there's the as we know the Jackson Courthouse in Buffalo. However, along the way, I have a relationship with the Truman Library, and it was they were doing a special exhibit on World War II at the library, and I got to thinking, there's a relationship here between Truman and Jackson. As you know, Truman appointed him to be chief prosecutor in Nuremberg, and perhaps they would like a portrait bust of Jackson for their display. And so we made that arrangement. And then Greg Peterson and Julia and Tom Schmidt and I, along with Dexter Benedict, the sculptor, presented that portrait bust to the Truman Library. That set off further interactions. And those of you who come to the library now and come into the new lobby will see a replica of that bronze portrait bust in the lobby as you walk in. So I think that's the fourth iteration of that particular portrait bust. But my point here is that anyone who becomes involved with the Jackson Center finds a great company of individuals who have very similar ideals, very similar interests, and it becomes a very fulfilling experience. I recently, of course, people who we know of my involvement at the Jackson Center, and we were having a recent virtual cocktail hour, much like this one, and the gentleman said to me, and this is irregardless of any political affiliation, he said to me, I've been reading a book by Ted Cruz, and he said there's paragraph after paragraph about Robert H. Jackson in Ted Cruz's recent book, talking about what a great Supreme Court justice he was, how eloquent he was, and how his many writings and his decisions have become such landmark writings for those who study the Supreme Court and who study the rule of law. And then, of course, there's John Barrett, who I'm looking at straight on here, and coming to know John. I mean, this is all within the last 5 years or so. And so all I wanted to communicate was that the relationships that one forms when becoming part of the Jackson family is immeasurable. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you so much, Don. Does anybody want to share another story?
Yes, Kristen, this is David Crane. And again, good evening, everybody. And what a wonderful moment this is for the Jackson Center. During the 5-year period that you're talking about, we all convened at Nuremberg, both the Jackson Center as well as the International Humanitarian Law Dialogues at the time, which included all the current and former chief prosecutors of the International Criminal Courts. And what a special moment it was for all of us to hold an amazing reception the evening commemorating the 10th anniversary of the dialogues, but also commemorating the opening statement. I believe it was the 70th anniversary of the opening statement. With us in the audience was the current Attorney General of the United States, who personally called me and said, I want to be a part of this. And she had been a prosecutor, an assistant prosecutor at the International Criminal Tribunal at Rwanda. And of course, you're certainly going to say yes, but it was a grand moment. We had almost all of the current chief prosecutors and former chief prosecutors of the tribunals present. And it was just a memorable time. And the Jackson Center was a cornerstone of that. And of course, all of the international humanitarian law dialogues that have been going on for 14 years, which began in 2007. And during that time frame, we had 3 living Nuremberg prosecutors. We found out there was a 4th, Bill Kaming, and we had all of them together at one moment. It was the only and last moment that we had. But there were some special times. We all know that. Everybody on this call, as I'm flipping through, looking at your wonderful faces, I met most of you at the International Humanitarian Law Dialogues, and I know that you had attended many of them and supported them. But I just recall that during the last 5 years, that amazing time at Nuremberg, where the Jackson Center, its members of the board and supporters, as well as all of the chief prosecutors and the Attorney General of the United States, gathered together and commemorated many things. So just a note.
You, David.
Kristen, can I just say one thing? You scared me when you told me first.
Of course, Carol.
I just want to say to every one of you, I've got stories. I don't have time tonight, but it's so much fun seeing everybody after all this time. We had a blast. Just think what we accomplished when nobody knew that we could do it. And Greg said for the first 10 years, it's only been 5 years. It's only been 7 years. It's only been 10 years. Now we can say it's only been 20 years.
Hey, Carol, if I might add something, how much is it going to cost us for you to keep those stories to yourself?
You'll find out soon. You'll get it in the mail.
If those could be redirected as charitable contributions, I know a very worthy place that would appreciate them.
You're okay.
Kristen, if I could jump in,
Yes, go ahead,
I wanted to add my voice to everyone else's, and people have touched on a number of things that I remember fondly about. I originally served with Betty Lene on the Chautauqua Foundation Board way back when. She was probably my first person associated with the Jackson Center that I had in my orbit. I served on the Board of Trustees under Dan Bratton for many, many years, so have such a great admiration and respect for both Dan and Betty. And of course, served on the trustees with Cynthia Peterson, and so then got to know Greg through Cindy. So suffice it to say, perhaps I was destined at some point in the future to have my stars cross with the Jackson Center, and I'm so proud and thankful that it did, because to get to know the person who is Robert H. Jackson and to learn about him and study his words is just amazing. And the work of the Jackson Center to spread that to the broader world is really, really important, and a mission that I still firmly support and believe in. And I appreciate everyone who has worked to bring it to where the Jackson Center is now and who is continuing to work for that. A couple of the things that I remember from my almost 3 years there very fondly, Greg absconding with the statue and getting it planted on our corner. That was quite a feat, and I still remember being offered the opportunity to tell the crane guys, you know, how to center that statue. No, you have to turn a little bit more this way, turn a little more that way, and we got it just perfectly, I think. And it was such a great addition to the center, and of course from a wonderful sculptor. The trip to Nuremberg and bringing a group of people to participate in the celebration and the recognition of the 70th anniversary of the Nuremberg trials was amazing. Representing the Jackson Center on a trip to Israel with a group of faith leaders and community representatives from Western New York during my time there was a lifetime experience that I never thought that I would have, and I'm so appreciative of. And I feel that I worked to forge yet again more relationships with Chautauqua Institution and the organizations up in Buffalo that are so important to continuing all of our work. Raising money, you know, our DRI success, and I haven't gotten down to the Jackson Center yet to see the fruits of that labor, but I'm looking forward to doing that at some point. But that was really an amazing experience to go through and to work on with Greg and other people involved in the center. So I think we have a lot to be proud of. Everyone has a lot to be proud of. I'm proud of my small tenure there. And I give Kristen and everyone who's continuing that work great kudos and best wishes for the future.
Thank you so much, Susan. We will do an official ribbon cutting at some point when we are able to gather in person again. So keep an eye out for that, hopefully in slightly warmer weather as well. But there are two groups of people that I want to thank quickly before I turn it over to Stan for his toast. And the first is Joe and Drew and Michael Baranich, who couldn't be with us this evening. Since education is at the heart of everything that we do here, having people who are committed to that experience and to passing along those learnings is critical to us. So Joe and Drew, thank you so very much for all of your efforts and your contributions to the education work that the center has done. Again, we wouldn't be where we are without you. So thank you both very much. Cheers to you.
Thank you.
Oh, and Anita, sorry, Anita, I forgot you. Yes, Anita, thank you very much. I was on the other page of pictures and my apologies. So Anita, thank you very much to you as well. Cheers to all of you. And then finally, I have to say, when I was looking at taking this job, one of the questions I had was the family involved? And so was this sort of a lovely passion project, or is this something that there is commitment and real value from everyone, including the family in? And so I was immeasurably gratified to see how closely the Jackson family has been tied to the center since its inception. And so Tom and Julia, thank you very much for being with us tonight as well, and for all of your service on our board of directors. And to the extended family as well, who couldn't be with us here tonight. Having your support is truly meaningful. And I hope that you have enjoyed how this legacy has developed over the last 20 years, and that you're looking forward to seeing how it develops going forward as well. So cheers to you all as well. And Stan, I am going to turn it over to you for the final toast of the evening. Stan, can you move a little bit closer to the computer? We are having a little trouble hearing you.
Greg, it was his vision that Colorado Ridge Jackson Center started, and it was his fabulous follow through that is primarily responsible for what the center has achieved. The first phase was basically devoted to Jackson League.
Not at that meeting.
Here at that meeting.
It's not getting through here.
Dan, get closer to the mic.
Yeah, Stan, can you get a little bit closer to your microphone? We're having a little trouble hearing you.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Better.
Thank you.
Practicing law in Jamestown and beyond. So the legacy period was first. Second, Jackson's outstanding contributions, both as Solicitor General, Attorney General, and on the Supreme Court. His brilliant letter to the district prosecutors is still cited as the best example of what a prosecutor, in this case, the assistant in the Justice Department, ought to follow. His leadership, Greg's leadership, brought us also to a better appreciation of the Supreme Court contributions. Whether it's issues ranging from interstate commerce to speech involving Pledge of Allegiance, or to process such as the Japanese internment during World War II. Then the world-renowned contribution that Jackson made to putting together and then prosecuting at Nuremberg is phenomenal. So I'm not going to use a glass. I'm going to use this wonderful and propose a toast to Greg Peters.
Cheers.
Greg, the evening would not be complete without hearing from you as well. So would you please take the mic?
Thank you very much. This is unbelievable. As I scrolled through all of the folks who are on this, and many who I can't see visually, but I see see the phone numbers, and made a note of all of you. There are stories that would take the next 5 hours, and then I'd have an immediate reaction from Raleigh Kidder. Raleigh would say, "Hey, I got to go to bed." And then John Barrett would simply say, "Greg, remember the adage you always said that the mind can absorb only what the rear can endure. So be brief, please."
Sure.
20 years, wow. It doesn't seem possible that from that time when, as Janetta said, when Carl, Betty, Tom Cardman, Phil Morris, I should remember Phil, and I came to my office and we talked about essentially a small building that would be next to the Lucy Center that was being built out at the time that would just simply have pictures. Little did we realize that shortly thereafter that Stan Weeks, who some of you remember, would call and say, "If you're ever interested, why don't you consider the Scottish Rite Consistory?" And yes, as was mentioned early on, I did sign a contract personally. I never told Cindy about it. Cindy, now in case you're curious, you're on the line.
Still here, but I'm aware of it now.
Yeah, I beg forgiveness. And so we off we went. Betty Lene was able to get a Masonic injunction because they were moving ahead towards selling it to another individual for a call center. And she enlisted the help of Judge Cass. So Steve, I know you're on the line. Please extend our best and thanks for Judge Cass, because if he hadn't done that, the building would not have been available. And the rest you've sort of heard about from Jeanette as history. And I won't necessarily reflect on that, but it was that first meeting 20 years ago to the day, which launched the concept. And here we are over this time period. I've had a chance certainly to reflect on those years where we've gone from concept to a concrete reality, and all of the variety of people, many of them on the phone here, a Zoom call, many of them have, I've been gathering up information for the last 20 years. It's remarkable as we pause and reflect on the thousands of volunteers, literally thousands of volunteers that variously have been caught up in the Robert Jackson vortex, the hundreds of programs we've had, the steadfast work of our board members and our executive directors, many of them on the phone, and staff. They've been dedicated to a cause to advance the legacy of Robert Jackson. And I'd be remiss if I didn't just call out John Barrett. John here, it's a fascinating story. He's been engaged in some form or fashion virtually from the beginning. At some point, and that probably he can tell the story and has told the story of literally talking to Harold Adams, who was one of our first board members, which then led to a conversation with me, which then led to him sending me his first draft of That Man. Now when I reflect on it, trying to convince me that he was legitimate. My God, was that why bother, John? You're the best. Which then led to, there's an iconic picture of John being at our first meeting, May 1st, with Gene Gerhardt. So there's a picture of Gene signing a book to John, and sort of the beginning of the Jackson torch passing. And John, of course, with a lot of help, has been with us from the last 20 years. And so many others who, if I start down this road, from the Dan Braddens, the Raleigh Kidders, and Randy Sweeney's, my God, Randy is hosted us from literally day one, all the way through. I'd miss somebody and I will embarrass myself. It's been a remarkable run, but I must, my wife's on the phone, and without her acquiescence and participation and partnership, this would never have happened. Trust me, because if you may think I'm a type A personality, Cindy's a triple A. So we all know her. So that's it. So
I'm hearing it. Thank you.
But I want to thank her, and also I know one of the people who was going to get on the phone, but is members of my firm, law firm. If they had not, frankly, acknowledged and permitted this activity and still permitted me to practice law in the law firm, this would not have become a reality. So there, as I really conclude my 20 years of board membership today, those are folks that I really want to thank, as are everybody on the call. It's fun to sit back and look at, we've had, again, so many programs, but we also look and count on the fact we currently, 20 years, we don't have any debt at the Jackson Center as a not-for-profit. That's unusual. We've raised, I don't know what the current total is, but it's well over $15 million for a not-for-profit organization in Jamestown, New York. Our programming is, we have 15 million hits on YouTube, and, a presence which, through everybody's assistance, we are nationally and internationally known. We've had courthouses named after us, statues built. We've had a variety of things which, frankly, had not occurred to anybody 20 years ago. And I recently was asked, did you anticipate, Greg, that this would, find its where it is today at age 20? And the answer is absolutely not. And we're all here today standing on the shoulders of everybody that's on this phone. There are stories about everybody on this phone, and I hope the time will come where we can all gather, maybe this summer, maybe and be able to share those in person. So I could go on, and I know that at some point Cindy will send me a text saying stop, and I will do that. But I just want to heartfelt gratitude to everybody on the phone, and this has just been a tremendous run, and I feel so confident and in the capabilities of our current board, our current staff, our current leadership, with the chairmanship of Leah and the presidency of Kristen. We're on ascendancy of advancing the legacy of Robert Jackson. And I personally couldn't be prouder, and I think I speak for a lot of those folks who've been part of this the past 20 years, to say and raise a glass to the Jackson Center. So to the Jackson Center.
There we go.
Here, here.
Jackson Center.
To Cindy and to Greg. And for those of you who may not know, today marks the 20th anniversary and last official act as a board member of Mr. Greg Peterson. And so also want to salute Greg for his 20 years of commitment, his retirement, although I know he's not going anywhere. He has promised me that. But I just also wanted to make sure that everyone on this call knew that we are also celebrating Greg's retirement. So Greg, Cindy as well, because you need a partner in crime. Thank you so much. Cheers to you
Thank
both.
you. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers to all of you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So all of you have laid such a great foundation for us for these 20 years, and our program theme for 2021 will be the work left to do. So, a very easy jumping off point after the last 20 years. So I really do hope that you will tune in to our programs for next year. I also have to give an extra special thank you to Carol Drake, who did a lot of the yeoman's work organizing the treats that were in your goodie boxes. If you have not yet received your box, and you don't receive it by Friday, please let me know, because I would like to make sure that you do get at least these lovely glasses that we are all toasting with. That I know the mail is a little bit tricky this time of year. We tried to send it in enough time to get to everyone. But if you do not get it by Friday and would like your glasses, please don't hesitate to reach out. So with that, this is the official kickoff of our 20th anniversary year. Keep an eye out over the next year for some other events. Hopefully there will be a time when we can all gather in person as well. But I really do appreciate all of you coming and being with us this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks,
Hi,
everyone.
everybody.
Hi, Joe.
Thank you,
Hi,
everybody.
Happy
Joe.
holidays, everybody.
Across California.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year
Happy
to you.
holidays, everybody. Thank you so
Happy
much.
holidays.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
John Barrett. Remember Paul Muni?
Yeah, I'm puzzled. Who's that guy who's there with you? 'Cause